Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We're going to talk about something today that can really make a difference in changing your life. If you got pain, things going on, if you got some psychological issues, maybe you're dealing with stuff in your life, you probably have energy that needs to be healed or energy that's stuck. And that's probably what presented those different situations that you're in now. It's called Reiki. It's energy healing. It's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And finally, more and more people are picking up on the fact that it can make you feel better. One of those guys is Yeshua Dupre, and he has a great practice called Zen Compass and practices Reiki and so much more. And we're going to learn about that today, get deeper into it. Welcome back. How you doing?
Doing wonderful. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. And I believe the teacher shows up when the student is ready. This whole Reiki thing, heard about it. I heard of it when I was in high school, long time ago. I was the camera operator intern at a cable TV station, and there was a lady on doing this thing called Reiki, and I'm like, all right, what are we doing here? All right, just got to operate the camera, go in for a close up, blah blah blah. It was a couple of camera people there. And then fast forward, like maybe 12 years ago, I did marketing for Metaphysical. Heard of this thing, Reiki. Never really did anything with it. Knew about it, but didn't really know about it until about 2.5 years ago, where had some changes in life and it showed up again. And then I finally did it. And I finally realized, wow, this stuff is legit. And this whole energy thing is legit. What was the moment for you where you realized energy is real and or Reiki is real and can help you heal?
And I realized it was real for me. It was very personal to my life, very personal to my backstory. My mom is very big into metaphysics. She is a teacher of metaphysical and string theory and how that interconnects. My grandfather was a Reiki master.
Oh, I remember you had said you didn't know that your grandfather, right?
Yes,
You didn't know.
I didn't know my grandfather was a Reiki master. I didn't know my family was spiritual in this side of it. And because they kind of protected me from it as a kid. Well, years go by, went through the military, was looking at putting myself back together from service and all the things that we endure there. And what I was doing wasn't working. I could see therapy. I could do all the recovery things. I could give up alcohol and smoking. Nothing really helped me put me back together. And so I started looking into energy. What is it? Why is it so important? And that's when the light bulb went off and pieces just started coming together. Reiki is energy, which is what helps us have ease in ourselves or dis-ease or disease.
Yep.
And
for sure.
So in that kind of play on words and through that adventure of working on me, I started looking for other medicines, other means, whether it be acupuncture, yoga, and Reiki kind of were the big three. And just that's what helped me kick off my journey. About 4 years ago is when it really started going, but I hit a tipping point where I knew it was for me about a year ago.
Were there sessions in Reiki you've had that were less impactful?
Yes, I've had many sessions that were not particularly impactful, especially not immediately. I would go in for a session with the gentleman I consider my master. He was the one that I always do my sessions with and attune myself. Those sessions, sometimes it wouldn't go anywhere. I wouldn't feel like I did much. It was almost like I was just walking inside my head, or I was just sitting there quietly relaxing and breathing. I would come back and say, oh yeah, it's been an hour. I thought I just laid down. I didn't feel a lot in the moment, but later on, I would start to remember things or emotions that were really intense that I couldn't process became much more manageable. It helped lessen that intensity of what I was going through and allowed me to start working on it. It didn't feel like it did much in the moment, but in reflection later on down the road, I could see the changes it had.
I can totally relate to that. There was a Reiki session I had, but most of them are virtual. I'd say maybe 20% were in person of the ones that I've had. And I do recall one where they didn't really feel anything. I was like, yeah, whatever. And then a day or two later, I was dealing with a personal challenge and needed to make decisions. I had so much clarity, like the fog went away. I was like, maybe that was from the Reiki. It had to be because I didn't do anything different.
I've had people say something similar that they find a peace or a zen, a clarity after the sessions. Because part of that Reiki work is what I do is I help channel the energy to let go of what is stagnant, what is no longer serving. With Reiki energy as the practitioner myself, I'm not doing anything. I'm just channeling the energy to assist. And that energy will help, like a pressure washer or just a clogged pipe. It'll help push that blockage down the line and let you work through it. And it's that thing that comes in and just helps gently work it through. And that clarity is what comes behind it.
Do I have this clear in that if you go for a session and your energy gets cleared out, it's all good. But if you're still dealing with things, whatever they may be, let's say a bad relationship that affects maybe one or two, three chakras, let's say your throat chakra, because you're not speaking your mind. I'm going hypothetical here.
That's absolutely accurate. Please continue.
So you had the Reiki session, and now, it's 2 weeks later, and you're still dealing with that personal situation where you're not being authentic because, let's say, the other person holds you back when you want to speak your mind, whatever it may be. So now the throat chakra is going to get clogged up energetically again, and you're kind of back to the basics. Maybe you're in a better place because it's clear. The energy is clearer, but it's still, you have stuff going on in that one chakra or wherever it might be. Is that kind of how it works?
That is kind of how it works. It's just like doing the dishes. If you never use the dishes, they stay clean in the cupboard. But if you're continually in the same circumstance, continually doing the same thing, the Reiki will help you work it through. But until you stop putting bad in, you don't stop getting bad out.
Okay.
So you have to work on what doesn't serve you and address what isn't working. I can help you along the way, but you got to stop with what's causing the circle.
Right. What about things that are way back in your past? Let's say, stuff from childhood. You can clear that out, and once it's gone, is it gone?
Partially. You can clear it out, and it lets go a lot of it. I'd say most of the time, most people let go of so much of it that it's no longer emotionally bound to them. But depending on how deep and how long you've been living with this emotion or this memory, this sensation, it can take time to fully let it go. Because Reiki is just, I like saying it helps to start the untying of the knots that we tie into ourselves. And it can loosen it for you, but at the end of the day, you, the individual, have to untie the knot yourself. We can help, the energy can help, and it'll help you heal, but you also got to do some work too.
When you say untie the knot, right away, I get a visual of cord cutting. Familiar? Yeah.
Yes. So part of Reiki and energy in particular is when you encounter someone or something that is very impactful to you, we consciously or unconsciously will link ourselves and tether ourselves to that event or that person. And so then forever, until we address that bond, that tether, that rope, we will feel what they're feeling. Or if we are allowing them to pull us where they want us to go, kind of like we gave them a leash to us. And that rope, that Reiki, we untie it with it and loosen it so that when you're ready to let it go, you can just let the rope go. It's no longer stuck to you.
But you have to let it go.
But you have to let it go. Something that I came across recently, when people come into your life and you're not dealing with their stuff, they'll throw a rope in front of you and they'll expect you to pick it up. And they'll keep throwing that rope until you finally do pick it up. What is that rope? It is any emotion, it is any reaction, it is anything that someone can do to get you to engage, to pick that rope up and to hang on again. You can let the rope go, but sometimes it's still tied to our heart. It's still tied to us emotionally through the experiences. And that's the energy, that's letting it go. And then you just have to not pick it up again.
Are those people also described as energy vampires?
Not always.
Okay.
Energy vampires are individuals who consciously or unconsciously are not aware of their actions and how they drain the people around them. They are of a low energy state, they're of a low energy mindset or a low vibration mindset, and that will bring the higher energy people down. And so for energetic individuals, especially those interested in Reiki, we may perceive them as an energy vampire, but what it may just be is that this individual may be going through something and they're not aware of it because they are not emotionally sensitive or emotionally attuned to themselves. And so they can just be soaking up what they don't have just because of a place they want. The energy vampire is the person that, to me, it's a little more malicious. They knowingly go to people who are high energy to take them down so they can pick themselves up.
Tell me about, I want to go back to what you said a second ago in letting go. And by the way, Yeshua, I love the analogy of the leash. Like, you know, they got you on a leash, but you're allowing it. How do you release the leash? How do you, you know, yes, Reiki can help, but how do you let it go?
The most direct method I've found that I can direct people to, it's Carl Jung's work and shadow work. Shadow work, it goes hand in hand with becoming a Reiki master, because your shadow, people give shadow work such a negative connotation. Your shadow is everything you deny about yourself. Those thoughts that you say you would do something and then you stop yourself from doing it for the shame of others, for the fear of judgment, that is your shadow being denied. Keep in mind that your shadow also is your anger, it is the nasty thoughts, it is those other invasive things, but by and large, it is just the pieces of you that you don't show to the world. And Carl Jung's shadow work, his methodology, walks you down a method of self-reflection and self-integration on all those memories and experiences you have. It takes on many versions of journaling. It can be talk therapy with the therapist and so many other methods. But there's a lot of self-paced ones that come out of his book, or books. The Red Book, it's a hard read. I warn you, it's a very hard read. It hits you in the feelings if you want an existential crisis. It's a good book. But it makes you reflect on your mortality, reflect on childhood emotions and memories and interactions, and helps you reframe the irrational mind and then come to let it go what you don't want to hang on to. Because you can have baggage or luggage. Baggage you drag around, or luggage you can choose to leave it behind.
Great way to put it. Baggage and luggage. And we all have them. We all have those cords, the leashes, that past relationships. Everybody you meet is another cord.
Yes.
And if we could actually see them, oh my gosh, what that would look like. There would be, you couldn't even, I'm imagining you couldn't even walk anywhere because there'd be cords all over the place of the relationships and the connections and everything, the emotions, everything in a lifetime that we've amassed. Somebody told me that the older you are, the harder it is to clear out or release energy because you have more baggage. You've collected more over time. Do you think that's true?
Kind of in a splitting hairs way, yes. I believe the older we get, the more fear we have of facing our shame. So it's not that we can't let it go. It is that in order to let it go, we have to face what we've ignored, not just this year, but the past 35, 40, 50 years. So it's not that we can't let it go or that it's harder. It's just that fear, because again, for me, it all comes to fear. Fear is the thing that stops us from everything. Shame is anxiety, fear of the past, and anxiety is fear of the future. At the end of the day, it's just fear. And that's what keeps us from letting go. That's what keeps us from moving on.
And the past, I would also imagine, is also potentially depression, can lead to that, because it's things in your past that you're thinking about. And certainly things in the future would be anxiety. You're anticipating something.
With depression, even, depression is a continual feeling that continues to depress yourself. You're continually shaming and shunning yourself for those shameful thoughts and feelings, which depresses yourself. It takes on many forms and the emotions are intense. And so it gets kind of similar or even soupy. But at the end of the day, it comes from a very similar place of emotional pain.
When you work with somebody doing Reiki, and I could share what it feels like for you, not for me, but I'd like to hear from you what that's like for somebody that doesn't even know. Hey, I'm listening to this, I'm watching it. Wow, this Reiki thing sounds like it might be for me. Finally, I'm going to take that little leap. It's
Yeah.
not, it's so simple, but what's a session like?
So of my sessions, I have three general responses. The first one is typically they didn't feel a whole lot other than they just got very relaxed and very comfortable, because what'll end up happening in a session, they'll lay down on the Reiki table or the massage table. And before this, we will actually have a little conversation about what's bothering them, what are they feeling, just to get an idea of what their status is when they come into the office. From there, I'll talk them through the different positions, and it usually takes about an hour. But during the session, what they will feel is either a cool kind of tingling sensation is one thing I've been told, or it's like a warmth, a
Hmm.
a slightly pressing warmth that they will feel just radiating from my hands. Um, and so it's those three options are usually the three that I hear about. And during that, they have experienced different levels of intensity. If there's a spot that needed more work, because again, I'm just the channel, Reiki is going to give more where it's needed. So if you have a lot going on in your heart, you may feel it more intensely there, and you may not feel it intensely anywhere else in the body. It's very subtle, it's very gentle. A couple clients do not like being physically touched, and so my hands will hover a few inches off of them. Some clients don't mind, and so it's absolutely at the discretion and at the limits of what your comfort levels are. And at any point, you ask a question that's not like you got to be silent. If a thought comes to your mind and you want to ask it. It's a natural, safe, open, and warm space.
Do you feel something when you pass a certain area? Like you're not even touching the person, but you're moving your hands down, whether it's virtually or in person. And I've heard that Reiki practitioners can feel something like heat if it's a certain area, troubled area, containing certain energy. Does that happen for you?
Uh, in a different degree, I've met some Reiki masters who, when they touch someone, they will get to know details about them that you can't otherwise explain. Some of them will understand the emotional state on a more deep level, whatever their recent issues are. For myself, I get a nudge, like I can feel something pulling my hand where it needs to go. And the one that jumps out is a friend of mine who's also a client. I didn't know they were going through any sort of relationship issues,
Oh,
but during the session, I just had a question for them. And when I asked about it, it was the hitting the nail on the head. I hadn't seen this individual, we haven't talked, but the question that came out was this the issue they're having? And I was pinpointed it right there. So I didn't understand, I didn't know where it came from, but the information just came to me.
wow. And not getting into details, confidential. What were you feeling? Were you feeling that there was a relationship issue? Did you have insight?
A Yeah, it was feeling that there was a rift between their relationship, because work had changed, mentalities had changed, and so they were growing apart. And so instead of talking about what was going on, they were just feeling what they were feeling on the inside, thinking they were crazy. What ended up
Wow.
needing to happen, it was someone was able to, hey, are you okay? Is this what you're feeling? And it was able to start the conversation. And then they were able to go and work on it with their partner.
Do you take on the energy of somebody else occasionally?
I do, but that is partially because I'm an empath in addition to being a Reiki master. And so the whole energy vampire aspect we touched on earlier is something I didn't know I dealt with very early on in my life. And so, yes, I do take energy on from others. And doing Reiki, it helps me release the energy I take on, but I also unconsciously will at times take on the energy of my environment. And that is just a learning process for myself.
Wow. The energy thing is huge. People don't realize it. Everything, every relationship, every connection, us talking here today, there's an exchange of energy. It's all going on right there, but many of us don't see it. And
Yes,
even in relationships, we don't really pick up on what's being exchanged there. That all being said, it's amazing how relationships last so long. Sometimes when you figure out that there's energy being passed back and forth and how it all changes dynamically, right?
absolutely. Because a relationship is just, I hate to say it this way, but a relationship is a series of transactions. If your transactions always go negative, you're just going to break the bank. You have to transact in a way with energy that results in there always being a net surplus. As long as that happens, that's usually how relationships continue forward. It's when they end up in the red that relationships usually come to an end.
Not to go down the relationship road so much, but when we talk about energy, do you find that some relationships, people aren't being authentic and that the energy isn't really real? And that's why it's kind of all off kilter in terms of how it feels?
This is actually one very close to me. Due to my childhood and very, very rough upbringing, I have a disorder called borderline personality disorder that causes me to have a lot of influx and kind of instability with my energy, with relationships. I used to be very easily influenced, and I was never my genuine self. And my relationship struggled for so many years because I couldn't embrace myself, the energetic side, the spiritual side. I was very must do what is normal, must work as a mechanic, do the normal, what everyone knows is normal. And as a result, I denied so much of my authentic self that it inadvertently strained in everything in and around my life, especially my relationship.
Wow. And I'm sure that there are many people dealing with that, and things just feel off because they're not being their true self and don't know how to do that because
Yeah,
the energy is off. They're not putting the right kind of energy out. Invariably, I'm guessing they're not getting the right kind of stuff coming back at them in terms of people, the dynamics of the relationship. Um, I when you're not yourself, something feels off, but you can't put your finger on it until you start harnessing this energy thing.
very much so. When you work on harnessing energy, you're looking at a form that isn't material, so it is only for your personal self and your greatest good. And one of the things that one of my masters have told me along the way, as a human race, we think we know what we want, but realistically, we only know what we don't want. And we're really good at that, but we are really bad at recognizing.
I got to think about that for a second. So we only know what we don't want, but we don't know what we want.
Yes,
Is it that the universe knows what we want and need, but sometimes we even deny it?
correct. The way I like to look at this is how many times do we suffer our success? You dream for something, you wish for something, you work for something, and then you get it, but then you're still not happy.
Sure.
So is what you wanted really your happiness or what you thought was your happiness? But when you ask people, what do you not want? They have a long list of what they don't want, but not what they do want that will make them happy.
There's a song that came out actually, the song is no, I'm sorry, 44 years old. And it just came up today in a conversation I had with somebody by the group Talking Heads. And the song is Once in a Lifetime. Check it out. It's
I will.
it's super cool, just the sound of the song, but essentially, and it's upbeat, but essentially it's about what you just said, where he basically says, you may find yourself in a shotgun shack. You may find yourself in another part of the world. You may find yourself with a beautiful wife and a beautiful car. in a beautiful house. And you may say to yourself, well, how did I get here? And essentially what he's saying is, you get all this stuff, but you're really not happy. And you kind of question it. However, the underlying current of the song, no pun intended, is about the water keeps moving underneath us and water is always flowing, but we try to go against the water. And what is the water? That's the universe, and it's going this way, and you're going against it. Listen, trust me, listen to it. It's not a deep song. It's almost kind of like corny, but fun. And it's once in a lifetime Talking Heads. It was a pretty big hit, back in the day, but that's what it's all about. And David Byrne, who I believe he might have borderline personality issues. He admitted it. And some other challenges, maybe, I don't want to say schizophrenia. I can't remember what it was, but he said he put the song together by listening to evangelists preaching. And he took different snippets of the words that he heard, but he came up with that song. But I think I listen to it like once a month, and many like major music stars, even from today, say the same exact thing because there's something to the song.
Yeah.
It's weird how it speaks to you. But it kind of sounds like, what we're talking about here. Wow.
It sounds like it. I'm going to definitely have to check it out.
Yeah. How do we check you out if somebody wants to do a virtual session in terms of Reiki and just start going through some healing? How do we find you?
You can find me at zencompass.com, zenscompass.com with an S. You can find me Zen Compass on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Shoot me an email or give me a call. It's all out there.
I can say firsthand, Reiki is a healer, and there's no difference virtually or not. And that's because energy doesn't know any time or space. It just transfers, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Great talking with you. Yeshua, just we got a little deep today, but you make it very clear in the way you explain it. And I appreciate that. I really do.
You're very welcome. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. We're coming right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.